Hi, everyone. This is Jennifer, one of the co-founders of Breaking Bio. I'm with Carmen DeLeon. She is currently a science educator at CuriOdyssey in the Bay Area. And funny story, well, sort of, we went to college together. So this is kind of the connection. And I feel like we were pretty lucky because we actually had quite a few people of color in our like group of in our major, well, like wildlife bio, which was awesome because I felt like that was a little different. And then in the wider world, there's fewer and fewer of us out there. So yeah.
I think California life is different.
That's also true. That's also true. Yeah, I've been in other places, and oh boy, do I stick out. So could you just go into your background? I mean, obviously you went to school together, but what other jobs have you done since then? You have quite the extensive resume, so just if you don't mind going into that a little bit.
Yeah, no worries. Like I guess they said, we both went to college together. Undergraduate degree in wildlife biology from UC Davis.
Go Aggies!
Yay, go Ags! A fun fact on why I studied wildlife, fish, and conservation biology at UC Davis was because in high school, I thumbed through the catalog backwards.
That's really, hey, but you love it, so.
I did. I ended up loving it. Part of the reason, and actually this is kind of something that I think a lot of people find themselves in, is that Davis had a lot of confusing animal related majors, and you kind of realize once you start studying animals that like studying an animal is not the same as studying that animal at a population level, behavioral level, genetic level. Like there's so many variations, and part of it was because Davis has so many majors that start with animal. So I actually went over throughout, right? And I was like, let me see if there's something a little bit more specific. And yeah, I ended up loving it, obviously, but didn't switch. Statistically, the Davis student switches their major 2.5 times.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
I guess, yeah, I never changed my major either, so I think we were pretty good in terms of maintaining that.
Conservation biology. And another interesting thing about my undergraduate studies is that I self-determined my specialization. So like all of us got to choose one of, I think it was 6 or 7 specializations at the time when we were there, kind of a set
something
of
like that.
Something around those. And I was very interested in disease ecology and veterinary medicine. So I self-determined a little specialization in wildlife health. And what's really exciting is a few years after that, I saw that that actually got added to the regular course catalog. So
nice.
That's my second Davis claim to fame of accidental discovery. Yeah, I guess I left Davis with kind of big dreams. I think that we all left with just really ambitious, go get 'em attitude, and we were given so many hands-on opportunities as undergraduates that I think that's how we kind of interpreted that that's the way the world worked, except it was 2008. That was an interesting time to graduate. I did a few seasonal internships, most notably the one that I'm still with as a volunteer after 11 years. I'm celebrating my 11th season with my first postgraduate job ever, which was with the Golden Gate Raptor Observatory, which is a partner of the National Park Service and run by the National Parks Conservancy over in the Golden Gate. So always loved birds. I didn't realize it until I got to college how much I loved birds. So I kind of specialized in that right out of college and got to work on raptor migration sites, both watching and doing banding activities for many, many different research projects. It's a place with an over 30-year history, so the reaches of the work that we got to do were vast. And interestingly, having a field internship really focused me on wanting to learn more about education. seems counterintuitive, but before that, as an undergrad, I had done a lot of lab studies with some field work, and I'd never done the education side. But what was unique about the Raptor Observatory is that they're community scientists. So by and far, most of the volunteers there are not professional scientists or not professional animal scientists.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was just so powerful to see that regular people could care that depth and passion to want to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate to have some good connections in Davis, where a couple of other folks, I say they took a chance on letting the field biologist get to do some education, and just with some good opportunities and mentorship. I went on to do an internship with Cal Waterfowl, helping to teach wetland ecology.
Oh, cool.
A fun fact on how I got that job is because as an undergraduate, I had helped one of their staff members make copies when they ran out. And they gave me a sticker, and I had that sticker in my water bottle, and I just remembered it when I graduated. So that was how Cal Waterfowl kind of stuck. They also were partners in the field research, the wood duck program that I was doing as an undergrad. So it was an interesting full circle, made them a copy, handed me a sticker, and then I got to intern with them.
That's pretty cool. That was that the wood duck project that Edie was running? Or
yes,
oh, gotcha.
Yes. And I think
I feel
like
fun times.
Yes. I mean, yes. I have so many stories.
Oh, never wear mesh shoes out in the fields unless you want misery.
Yes. I have learned that you cannot outrun a mosquito.
Oh God, no.
You can't. We tried it we had time to do that experiment. You can't.
Yeah.
But I also learned that I am reasonably resistant to poison oak.
Lucky you. I'm not that lucky.
No, I mean, the number of trees we had to hug to climb up to get to the boxes. I was over at the farm in winters, so I had one of the more remote and interesting natural sites. Not neat in a row corridor. So maybe they took a chance on me in education because they saw that at least I was pretty innovative and resourceful and at least nimble on a ladder and tall trees covered in poison oak as a field tech. So maybe I could do the same thing with education, be resourceful and just dedicated to figuring it out. Yeah, which I did. So I tell people that, I was pretty decent at the biology part, showing kids specimens, taking them out into wetlands. And for the art part, well, drew a lot of modified stick figure ducks.
That's awesome.
Also, a skill taught to us by Professor Edie because we did pictograms of ducks.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So there we go. UC Davis education, you never know what parts you're going to use of it and how.
This is true. This is true. Definitely. Oh my goodness. That's so funny. And then I guess so you just said that, you just happened to flip open the catalog backwards and you just landed upon wildlife conservation as a thing. And then for you personally, why do you think it's so important for conservation to be diverse and just STEM in general, actually?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because that opinion has changed since I was very young and was inspired to be a conservationist until now. I think it's really funny that as a kid, representation wasn't necessarily a big part of what either encouraged or discouraged me from wanting to pursue conservation. I grew up being addicted to National Geographic documentaries and watching Corwin and Steve Irwin. And as a kid, it never occurred to me that when I grew up, that because I didn't look or act like those people or have the same backgrounds, that I might not necessarily get the opportunities I want. It never occurred to me as a kid. It never discouraged me. It was never a thought that crossed my mind, which I think is really interesting, because today as an adult, I really think that representation matters for our youth, to the point where I'm just so surprised that the lack of diverse examples I had growing up that never, crossed paths with me. But I think that in general, now that I work with, I guess as a kid, I only knew me, myself, and I. But now that I'm a person who mentors youth and teaches youth for a profession, that I think they definitely look to who resonates with them. Maybe it's somebody who talks like them, dresses like them, acts like them, has the same t-shirt as them. Kids find commonalities in really deep things, like sharing common values, beliefs. They also really connect those really basic things. Maybe they just notice that you have the same favorite color. So I just think that diversity, with having examples of people from all different interests and backgrounds and looks, helps our future conservationists understand that they are welcome at this table, and that they are not apart for any reason on how they might look or think. So to me, that's kind of how, I guess, my personal shift in why does diversity matter. And I think it's also from just a professional standpoint. I think you might see what a conservationist does on TV, or know a famous scientist who's a conservationist, and maybe you are keen on pursuing a skill like engineering or art, and you don't feel like that aligns professionally with somebody in conservation. So I think not only culturally but professionally, diversity helps to make people feel like there's a niche. Like a good ecologist will know there's a niche for that.
Exactly.
You want to say it. And I just think that for a lot of people, if that's not pointed out to them frequently, often, that there are so many, unfortunately, negative and discouraging reasons to not become a conservationist. I think that we're in an era where a certain segment of the population is really, really super hopeful and inspired to pursue conservation. But like, honestly, in everyday life, I feel like there's an equal number of people who are disenfranchised and discouraged and wouldn't pursue conservation because they don't feel like it's worthwhile. And just one more barrier, maybe they don't feel like they belong there, and we're losing teammates that way by not increasing diversity and maintaining it and pointing it out to the folks who perhaps need to know that the most. Yeah. On a personal level, that's kind of where I fit in as an educator, is pointing these things out to youth when they make a remark, instead of ignoring it, like actually addressing it and saying, no, it's okay that you really like math. I've had a student recently who really liked math, and he was in an eco camp about earth science, and he didn't really feel like he fit in. But many times over, I pointed out to him, like, well, think about this in math terms. Here's a percentage for you. Here is, a ratio to help you understand. And I think that there's so many different mindsets that cultural diversity, professional diversity, just fields of specialization helps people feel like we can be on the same team. Sometimes people don't realize we are gravitationally stuck to the same team called planet Earth.
Exactly. No, and that's true, because people don't realize that conservation isn't just the people out in the field doing research or in a lab. It's, people, like you said, the engineers, the mathematicians, statistics. I mean, if you're doing research, holy moly, the statistics that you have to do for papers and to publish and things like that. I mean, it definitely there's a need for that. There's need for people in accounting and finance and everything. And it's like, it all fits together, but I mean, it's just putting those pieces together and for people to realize that it's there. And again, that's kind of, what we're trying to accomplish here with Breaking Bio is to kind of highlight these different things and the different aspects of that. So yeah, I mean, of course, like, I personally am so passionate about engaging with kids and, getting them interested in conservation in one way or another. So yeah, that's just, a personal thing. And then what are some of the biggest challenges that you've personally faced?
I think for me, I'm still figuring that out. I feel like 11 years out of finishing my first degree in conservation, finishing my first real job in wildlife conservation, I feel like I'm barely figuring that out, because what feels like a challenge at the time or feels impossible at the time or really discouraging, I feel like I'm really at a place where I can look back at that and I'm trying to figure it out. Kind of what would have happened differently, what could have happened, what was really terrifying, what was not actually a big deal. But I'm not gonna lie, statistics was a challenge.
Oh yeah.
I would say that fitting in academically at first was a challenge, not just in school, but having the anxiety of coming out of school and not necessarily feeling like I was going to make it because I wasn't good at all the different aspects of wildlife conservation. It's wildlife conservation is such a Venn diagram.
It is. It is.
And I mean, obviously, doing the California waterfowl internship, art was a challenge that I realized I came out of my degree with a passion for animal behavior, passion for phylogenetics. Those were two of my main interests, of disease ecology. And I was terrible, or okay, actually, I'm going to pause myself there because a lot of times people tell themselves they're terrible at math. I was not passionate about kind of the quantitative and artistic realms of biology because I didn't feel like I had strong skill in those or had a natural inclination to want to do them. And I guess nobody had worked with me to prove it otherwise. So I just kind of felt discouraged in those respects. And I think that those two skills, arts and math, are really important to wildlife conservation. If you cannot communicate about your species in a way that appeals to a large audience. I have always been a strong writer, but writing is not always what gets people to change their behavior or notice a charismatic species. So to me, that was kind of challenging, feeling like I was in this realm of I'm very passionate about knowing about animals conservation issues, communicating them to people, but I didn't have the passion for certain technical skills. So to me, that was a challenge. And luckily, I did find some good people who helped me understand that when I started going into museum education. So doing kind of like wildlife education led me to museum education. And in a museum setting, nonprofit life, lots of times you are teaching science with toilet paper tubes and Alka-Seltzer, maybe some film canisters if you're lucky. But I think that having the opportunity to be really challenged and say you don't have any fancy tools, you need to make science approachable, because if you can't make science approachable, you're not going to do anything for conservation. Conservation is emotional, it is rational, it is all science. So really learning about science communication, I think, was the biggest challenge I faced early on is understanding where do I perceive these barriers and where can I be resourceful to find my way of navigating around those barriers. And yeah, after I started my career in museum education, I was really curious to push myself farther. So I basically like went across the country and back doing different networking opportunities, conferences, internships. Ended up going to graduate school in Idaho, and on a diversity level, I think that my travels across the country were a really big challenge. I was shocked to see that certain human behaviors and separations that I learned in school as history were very much a part of, it was 2012. 2012 to like 2014 was that exploration time, and it hurt so badly to see that the world was a really divisive place outside of my comfortable Northern California bubble of the Great
This
Bay
is
Area
true, yeah.
and Davis. But I think it was a necessary challenge for me to see. Feeling like you're being stared at all the time. You know, it's both positive and negative, interestingly. I did an internship in a very small town, but a lot of people know it actually, Yellow Springs, Ohio. And being different was both a positive and a negative thing there. A lot of the town folk were just amazed that they had never met a San Franciscan before. So being novelty, and what they really meant was they had never met somebody who grew up in an eco-minded, socially liberal environment for their whole life, and that was something that they had wanted in their town for a long time, and they were just so interested in meeting somebody. So it was kind of a challenge, both in a positive way of feeling like a novelty, because I was like, wow, well, this is really strange that people, because I'm shopping at the garage sale, they just want to talk to me for 30 minutes because they want to find out about my childhood and what it was like and how I feel.
Oh gosh.
You know, on a negative aspect, outside of that town, I did face some interesting discrimination and judgment and outright racism, both directly and indirectly, and that was really hard to wrap my head around. You know, kind of at that point, it was still so new that I didn't really feel personally attacked. So as far as a challenge, to me, it just kind of qualified how big of a job I felt like I had in the future, and I felt kind of helpless for a while because I was like, gee, how do we get people connected when we can't connect on a human level? How are we going to problem solve on the bigger level of sharing resources worldwide?
Right. Yeah.
Both, you know, both from moment to moment, place to place, and also long term. So I think meeting discrimination eye to eye was kind of my middle of the journey. I don't really, in the grand scheme of things, as far as the people who you're going to be interviewing, I think I definitely probably have a medium level of journey. It's 11 years long only. Less than a third of my life by now that I'm reflecting on. But yeah, when I went to Idaho, I had a choice of different graduate schools, and I remember when Idaho felt like it could be my, I guess, academic professional home, was the first stop that we got out on our long road trip home from our internship in Ohio. In Idaho was, we went to a grocery store, and for the first time in 6 months that I had been away in Ohio, I heard Spanish being spoken around me again. And it was just this sigh of relief that I never knew I would experience when I was like, I am this much closer to home now.
Yeah.
So that challenge of, I guess, being homesick in a different way than, obviously you miss your family, obviously you miss your friends, but I didn't know that I could feel homesick for missing diversity, acceptance, and culture. So that was a challenge to realize that most of the places I go in the world, I will have to miss that because it's not present in many other areas. And I think lately is after kind of the Idaho adventure, I mean, obviously experiencing alpine lake, 10 feet of snow.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. I specifically forced myself to have a different weather and season type of challenge because at a certain point I didn't feel like I could call myself an ecologist without understanding what a season was.
Right.
The giant leaf piles in Davis, that's a season, but you don't get all four.
That's true.
I wanted to see what winter was, so that was an intentional challenge along the way, because it is a different culture living in a place where you're looking for your first class and you're looking for your students by headlamp, but it's 9 a.m. and you need a headlamp to find your kids because we're so far north. That's the winter, and yeah, that was just like a physical challenge. Most recently, I would say my challenge is just having enough experience to step back and really ask myself what is going to be the place where my type of creativity and my skill level fits in toward my bigger goal. What are my non-negotiable kind of values, beliefs, and norms, both professionally and personally? And that's where I think I found the answer, but I'm only 6 months into that answer, just about. So we'll see.
It's a process.
It's definitely a process, and what you learn after you finish college and for a hot minute think you know everything you need to know, one day you figure out how to ask the questions and know all the things you don't know. I would say that's a relatively new discovery. That's one of the things I learned in graduate school is how to find those questions. So I guess without knowing it, I probably spent a lot of life being challenged by not knowing what those questions were to ask.
It's true. I think a lot of us don't know what those questions are. We kind of just blunder along and, just kind of go with the flow. And then it's like, oh, wait, hold on. There are questions. But yeah.
I tell people that I live by my science. Keep experimenting no matter what, whether you're actually professionally doing it or maybe you're just deciding what your next conference is that you're going to attend, the next person you're going to shake hands with. Do an experiment. Figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And then what's the coolest thing that you've done so far in your career?
Yeah, with kind of reflecting on all of the things that I've had a chance to do, really honestly, I am a back to basics kind of person. The most incredible thing I've done is developed both the opportunity and skill and interest to look at what's right here in my own backyard, a different way, with care, with intention, with appreciation. I think that a lot of us grew up learning about lions and tigers and bears, charismatic megafauna, and charismatic landscapes. But what has been most amazing to me is finding out that what's around you is really cool. I guess it's my job to teach this to kids, to look at animals that live right here in California, look at the soil, the plants, the bay, the ocean, the air, right here in California. And as much as I've been to different places and met different people and tried a lot of different experiences. The coolest thing to me has been getting to explore my own California coastline by getting to live, work, play in a national park. So the Marin Headlands Golden Gate National Recreation Area, to me, is the coolest place in the world because it's in my own backyard. Because I feel like I've lived it inside and out. We've had good times. We've had interesting times. And just the wonders of a place where you can come face to face with an American kestrel, which is my favorite bird in the entire world. But another day, I might just be hundreds of feet away from a blue whale that is migrating from who knows where. Like, it just, I mean, so is the kestrel. I feel that exploring this landscape, it's a migration site, it's in my own backyard, that I feel the collective energy of everything in ecology interacting at that one spot. We have temperature, we have nutrients in the ocean, we have the animals that are migrating in response to the nutrients in the ocean, we have a working port where people are still trying to get goods in and out of San Francisco and the Golden Gate. So to me, just having the opportunity to be a volunteer, a staff person, an intern in the Golden Gate National Recreation Area has been the coolest thing that I have done in my entire life. I feel like I'm lucky to have gone through that cycle there, first as a Golden Gate Raptor Observatory intern, second as a Nature Bridge Golden Gate environmental science educator, and then now as a volunteer in a leadership position back with the Raptor Observatory. So I just think, I guess it's not one specific cool thing, but being at the epicenter of a migration, getting to know it up close and personal, getting to share it with other people who can make a difference for not only that landscape, but the planet, has been the coolest thing that I could never imagine being a part of before it started.
Mm-hmm. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. And thanks to all our viewers. If you're interested in following more of our interviews, go ahead and click the subscribe button below the video. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye, guys.
Thanks so much.